Hey, everybody. Today we are talking politics. We're going to talk about staying informed, making decisions, and most importantly, staying sane. This is Ask Briar, the place you go to ask follow-up questions. I don't know. I'm working on the intro. Since I'm going live to a bigger audience soon, I thought I should start tidying things up. Well, we'll see how it goes. I have pretty banners now. Not that you can hear those on radio, but at least they help me stay kind of on topic. Alrighty. So, I don't know why people ask me about politics, but somehow they do a lot. And I have many opinions. So, I think a question that I was asked recently by a friend was how I keep myself up to date without going crazy. I have probably mentioned before on this show how my social time is pretty heavily managed, and I keep track of how much time I spend on social media, how much time I spend on other media, pretty obsessively, actually. So I know how much time I'm spending in various and assorted places. And staying informed is one of those things that we walk a fine line. You can, many people, I would say, are entirely uninformed, or they are getting information from not great places. But we also have to talk about how you get your information, where you get your information from. So I think one of the best, most neutral places that I go to find information is probably Wikipedia, which strikes most people as strange, but the news page of Wikipedia is edited to be, I'd say, pretty bias-free, to be honest. Wikipedia has lots of bias, and it is evident if you spend any time as an editor on the back end. But by the time it makes it for public consumption, or as live events are happening, it's a really great way to kind of keep your pulse on what's actually going on in the world, not just the United States of America, and to be able to really find the information that matters to you. So the news page on Wikipedia has long been my media staple. I don't read the newspapers. I canceled my New York Times subscription earlier this year. It was past time, but ever since I've not had a really good print media that I trusted. And I think that's what it really comes down to when we talk about staying informed. Who do we trust? What kind of information are they giving us? Are they giving us news, or are they giving us their opinion about the news? And so I think that one of the best ways is to find someone, oftentimes it's just one person, whose news gathering you trust. Sometimes that's a local person, sometimes that's nationwide. So my guiding news star, and it's funny to me because of why he's my guiding news star, not particularly because, so Shepard Smith, for, oh gosh, probably 20 years now. And I watched him on Fox News long after Fox News kind of became what Fox News is. And I have always watched him and loved him because a volcano. I'm really, I don't know how to square the fact that my favoritist newscaster of all time is my favoritist because of a fictional movie about a volcano exploding in LA. Nevertheless, that is, in fact, why he is my favoritist newscaster of all time. And he recently started a show on CNBC called The News with Shepard Smith. It's just the news. There is no opinion. There is fact-based information. I watch it every morning now when I get up. It's on live, I think at 7 p.m. Eastern. And this morning, there was a lovely interview with Dr. Tony Fauci about Corona. There were really great stories about the hurricane path. Like, at the end of it, I felt informed, not trodden upon. And I think whether it's Shepard Smith or anyone else, whoever you choose to give you your news, and this is key here. News. What is the definition of news? It is fact-based, right? What we're looking for when we're looking to gather our news is the facts, the truth, as much as we can possibly distill them. So, if that's the case, then I want my news to be as genuinely fact-based as possible. And I want to feel like I'm getting facts, not just opinion. Whoever you choose, at the end of your news gathering time, whether you are reading, whether you are watching, no matter how you're taking that information in, please do yourself a favor and check in with how you feel about it. If you feel stressed, that might be your news source. It might be the news too, but it might be your news source. And knowing how that information sits in our bodies and how it's been delivered to us, it makes a difference. What I choose to input, I've chosen because I want it from someone who delivers it with some compassion and some feeling and some empathy while still giving me exactly the facts. So no matter how you go about making that decision, you should figure out a way to make it feel as good as possible. Right now, in particular, the news that we have coming in is so stressful, so completely overwhelming, that what we're looking at becomes just a barrage of information. And when we are getting all of these inputs, making decisions about how to use them becomes, well, our next question. Hey, a banner. Woo. Okay. Let's talk about making decisions with your news sources and how you're making your decisions politically. So, when it comes to making a decision about your political beliefs, what do you base that decision on? Do you logically base it on all the facts or information at hand? Or do you base it on a feeling? This is a question on the Myers-Briggs, more or less, and there is no right or wrong answer here. Whether you base it on fact or feeling doesn't matter as long as you are aware of how you're making that decision and how you're going to own that decision, right? So let's talk about the fact-based decision first. in particular, when we're looking at the political landscape that we have in this country right now, we are looking at two candidates. And I'm guessing if you're a member of my audience, you are probably not a fan of the current sitting president. You probably don't like a lot of his policies, but whether you do or don't is immaterial. The facts on the ground is that he has made some dubious personal, political, business decisions, right? So we can compare those facts to the equal set of facts that we have about a very long political career. And there are some problems when we look at the length of that career, because a career politician is often making the decisions of his constituents at the time. So we have to look at the time too. A particular example that I'm going to offer for you here is Biden's stance on the Defense of Marriage Act. When that bill was passed in the 1990s, it was a different time, right? It was a different time. We looked at LGBT issues in a much different way. We were not square on how we were going about making strides with the gay and lesbian community. We didn't care about the gay and lesbian community. Even as Democrats, we didn't really care about the gay and lesbian community. So it was a decision made on behalf of constituents at the time. Whether you agree or disagree with this decision or any other is immaterial. And I really like to emphasize to people in my community and in my space that I don't care what you believe. I just care that you believe. Just pick something meaningful that matters to you. It's helpful if your beliefs don't infringe on other people's beliefs. But when you're making decisions on fact, it is important to understand what your beliefs are, because you cannot know whether or not those facts square up with what you believe and what matters to you. And in both cases, whether we're deciding on facts or whether we're deciding on feeling, our beliefs about who we are as a people, who we are as a country, all of those things matter a great deal. It's about being able to figure out what our values are as a people, what our values are individually, and then making them work together, right? But it's important for you to know where your beliefs are aligned before you go into the decision-making process. So if we're looking at the facts, what we want to examine are really across the board political decisions. We want to look at actual statements made, and there's some dubious ones on both sides here. We want to look at potentially other facts at hand. So I am always personally loath to have a discussion about voting and politics and making a political decision without mentioning that you don't have to choose between the two parties. There are other options. Now, many people will tell you that choosing one of those options is throwing your vote away. But if we're voting on feeling, perhaps I cannot morally stomach either of the two major candidates and therefore must vote for someone else or not vote at all. I think it's really important, whether we're making a decision on fact or feeling, to figure out what the boundaries of those decisions are. How do we shape our personal guideposts around what we allow in to our decision-making space? Whether that's the information we're allowing in or whether it's other people's opinions that we're allowing in. It's really important that you make your decision, whether it's fact or feeling, on the parameters that you have decided are most important to you. So let's talk about feeling a little. This one's pretty easy. Morally, questionably, make the decision that feels right. One of my favorite copywriters, um, Alexander Franzen, talks about the heart and the gut. The hut. What does it feel like in your hut when you are making that decision? That's all you have to square if you're making a decision based on feeling. And for people who make their decisions this way, typically, I think it is easier to square the consequences of that decision. When we're making a decision on fact and not feeling, we can tally columns and check boxes and tick things down the line. But at the end of the day, sometimes there is no clear winner in a decision. I think there is probably here. But in any decision, we're looking at what the facts are on the line. If we're making that decision by feeling, it doesn't matter. We're choosing what feels most fully in alignment. And I think that if you're feeling in alignment with your choice, if it feels right to you, then that is just as valid as basing a decision on strictly facts. However, I think the best answer is probably somewhere in between, right? We should take all of the facts that we can gather and, again, choose your sources carefully, limit them to places or people that you trust. Collate that data into what you believe are the facts at hand. And then, when you have those facts in front of you, ask what feels right. Usually, there's this place. Human design says that more than half of us are emotionally based deciders. I think that's probably true. We decide based on how we feel about things. So if it feels right, after we've examined the facts, then we're probably in the most comfortable place we can be about making that political decision. So what does that leave us with? Oh, well, staying sane in the face of dealing with politics right now. And that's a tough one because I won't say we are more polarized than ever before. If you truly think that, I encourage you to go and read some political campaign ads between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. I believe there were some allegations of pig fucking. I'm not even kidding. So politics has kind of always been a dirty, dirty game. And it is a game that we, the people, only get to watch as though we are spectators in this sport of decisions about our lives. And for some of us, those decisions are more impactful than others. It's the government making actual decisions about how I get to live my life, what rights I have, and those things are incredibly stressful. We've talked a lot over the last few weeks about building sanctuaries, about what it looks like to cultivate safe places for yourself. I want to talk today about creating boundaries around politics. So, I just celebrated my 20th anniversary. My husband and I are both very politically passionate people. We do not see eye to eye on a great number of issues. And over the years, this has led to many fights, loud, angry yelling. We have always established the rule as a couple that fights are okay, that it is important for us to be able to get our feelings out. When we were newly married, within the first few years of our marriage, there was actually a list on a yellow piece of legal pad detailing the rules for arguments because we had to have them. There had to be a clear line about what was acceptable in an argument, what was not, what was the limit, and what was going to be at stake if you crossed those lines, right? What potential consequences were, because it doesn't matter if you have rules if you're not willing to enforce them. That's what boundaries are. So we had this very clearly detailed list of what was allowed to happen in a debate and an argument. And they have certainly clarified themselves over time. One of the most important rules is that we do not discuss politics before 10 a.m. This is largely because I am a night owl. And even if I'm no longer keeping night owl type hours, I do not respond well to the world first thing in the morning. Not even a little bit. So many of our fights over the years have been at 6, 7, 8 a.m. when he's reading a news story on his phone and he'll bring it to me like, look at this, and we'll start talking about it. And 5 minutes later, we're screaming at each other because we emphatically disagree. I'm not saying my way is the best. Let me be perfectly clear about that. Only that it's my way. It's the arrangement that we have worked out long term because it is important to both of us that we be able to facilitate these conversations. I truly do not believe that I would be as informed as I am or as aware as I am without the ability to have these kinds of productive arguments. Because let me tell you, no troll can rattle me after having to shout this down with my husband. So I find them to be really productive conversations, and that is why we continue to make sure that they happen, but within a contained space of what is acceptable for us to talk about, what time it's acceptable, where potential limits are around those conversations, where we have to be able to walk away from the conversation. Your boundaries around your political beliefs are really important. And as we go into this next month, I want you to think hard about how we are shaping our boundaries, what we're doing with them, and how we're enforcing them. It's important that you look at this in every space. For me, on social media, in most cases, the hard line that I have given myself is that I have to walk away. I can no longer sit and entangle myself in these kinds of non-productive debates, especially when there are more important things to do. Social media is not a place where education happens. It's a place where we go to reinforce what we believe. Social media is a big problem, in particular for a lot of us at this time. And if you need to set some actual boundaries around defining your time, I encourage you to read an article by Mark Manson entitled The Attention Diet. It walks through his plan for separating himself from social media. There are others out there, but I like Mark's because it's reasonable. It is not Cal Newport's banish all social media from all devices forever, which is not quite true, but Cal's pretty extreme in the leave it all behind. And I think that there has to be some happy mediums with social media. For me, it has largely been a place of extremes. I have received incredible support over the years from my communities and my online families. I couldn't live without them. But I have also been exposed to incredibly polarizing situations where I have felt worse for the experience. When we are looking at populating our time, we should always choose to fill it with activities that make us feel good as much as we possibly can. And social media fighting is not one of those. Fighting about politics in general is also probably not one of those things. So ultimately, I really encourage you to figure out ways to establish your boundaries around your time, around your energy, around your personal relationships. Figure out what you're okay with discussing. Figure out what you're not okay with discussing. Figure out what your hill to die on really is. When we reach that place where we have this absolute stand in what we believe, and there is this firm line in the sand, it's pointless, right? To go over those lines with the people that we love, with the conversations that we are allowing ourselves to have right now. In everything, boundaries in your personal relationships allow you to be together and also be who you are, wholly, completely as a person. The clearer you are about those things, the easier it is to step in to your beliefs and to your decisions and to feel good about them, no matter how you have to defend them or talk about them or who you're talking about them with. All right, y'all. That is what I have for you today. It is most likely about the threshold for you to register to vote here in the States. If you have not done so already, figure out how to do that. Vote.org. I will plug in some links in the comments or the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all on Friday. Bye.